Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes for those keeping count. This is episode 286, and we are slowly approaching that 300 mark. Now, my next guest helps people wake up to live the life they really want or desire. And you might be saying, well, how does he do that? Well, I want to bring on Joe Graham, and we're going to find out together. So thank you, Joe, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, my friend. It's funny, we were talking beforehand. I've just made a move in a time shift. So I'm like, oh crap, what time is this going to be on? And I'm like, oh, I'm good because I'm looking at my time because I'm used to being on Central. Now I'm on Pacific because Arizona's weird, but I appreciate you having me on, my
Well, it,
friend.
it was funny because I thought I had an hour to prep, and I looked at the clock, 10 minutes. I'm like, crap. So the whole time shift has really affected everybody. And part of me says, okay, we should just get rid of it. And the other part of me says, I understand the reason why it was created to begin with, but it really only affects portions of the East Coast and maybe some of the West Coast, but people in the middle don't care.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, the reason for this podcast or this episode and bringing you on, because I really like the how you help people wake up to a life that they really want to live. And it took me a long time to figure that out. As I told you off air, and I've told a lot of my listeners that when I first started as an entrepreneur, as a full-time entrepreneur, because I was an entrepreneur for a little bit in 1989, and that business crashed and burned. And then when I started the cleaning business in 95, that business lasted 19 years. But I knew going into it that, and especially my wife knew going into this business that it wasn't going to last long. Well, 19 years is a long time,
That's
but
a long time.
that's a long time. But I knew that by 2001 that I loved coaching people. I love doing, all these things with marketing and helping people grow. And so I created this coaching company that I still have today, but I started devising ways to figure out, okay, how can I slowly phase out the cleaning company? How can I, sell it to somebody? And as I was doing that, then 9/11 hit. So, a lot of the businesses pulled back on their marketing. They pulled back on uh, almost everything. The cleaning business was still rocking and rolling because people still needed to have that done, but they didn't want to spend the extra money on marketing. So I took on clients here and there, um, but it wasn't until 2014 or 2013 when my first book took off that things really started rocking and rolling. It convinced me to sell the cleaning business. But I knew I always wanted to wake up to a business I really desired. The cleaning business was great,
Mhm.
but it kept me local. It was not something that I could really grow beyond the boundaries of my local demographic. The consulting business, I have clients all over the world, and I have more freedom. And as I've talked to people before, the two words that I live by are freedom and legacy. Freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want, and for the benefit of who I want. And legacy, what am I leaving behind? And that would be the books, the podcasts, the videos, anything that I think is educational for the next generation to learn by. But here you are teaching people right away, this is what you need to do.
Well, but you mentioned something there. You had a dream. You were starting to move forward with it, but you didn't quit what was working for you. You had
Mm-hmm.
the cleaning business. You had tried something before that. And I think a lot of times we hear burn the ships, do the thing. And here's the crazy thing on burn the ships, because I always like to hit this, and it kind of goes against the entrepreneurial idea of just burn it and go all in all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Cortez burnt the ships because if he went back to Havana, he was dead. They were going to kill him. He took the least riskiest action that he could do that could have some success. He goes back to Havana, he's dead. He burns the ship, at least he has a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we try to burn the ships too soon because we don't understand the concept of what that means. It means that sometimes you have to, like you did your consulting business, you did your cleaning business. You've
Mm.
done other things to get to that place to where now you get to do a bunch of things that you do. When I started out, I'm a sales guy. So I've been in sales for 20 plus years. I was winning awards, doing all these crazy cool things. I'm like, I took my kids to Disney. I took my wife to Hawaii. In fact, in the last 3 years now, we've gone to Hawaii 4 times. We're going to fifth time this September. But I'm a 20-year overnight success in the sales world and in business. It's not the instant gratification. It's that building, growing, and making it work for you to wake up to a life you actually want to love and do. And I'm not saying you can't just go all in and do it because for some people that works. But I always hear that funny, oh, I'm gonna tell my wife I'm quitting my job and just go out and do this. You better make sure your wife's on board with that because that's not gonna be good if you don't. And then secondly, is there a market there? Like you
Mhm.
said in the beginning, you wanted to probably back in 2001, 2002 go all in on the coaching and consulting, but you had to build it up because of the market and how it worked and all that different things. So no, I love how you navigated to where now you're able to do what you wanted to do, but it took time.
Yeah, and I think most entrepreneurs forget it's the long game. You know,
Mhm.
they don't want to put in the time. We live in an instant gratification world where they think, okay, I can just quit my job, become an entrepreneur, and become, as Indiana Jones says, fortune and glory. I'm going to have it all. This is what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you, it's not what's going to happen. You are going to fail. But you learn from those failures. You know, I'm not a natural born salesperson. I'm not. I tell stories. I introduce myself. I listen to people, and then I just present something that I think will work for them, and it usually works for everyone. I can't remember 101 ways to close a deal. It's just not who I am. But I see salesmen all the time. They're like, "Hey, Rob, I just closed this great sale." Okay, great. But I'm glad for you, but they don't know how to follow through. And I love sales, but the follow through is the most important, I think, in most cases.
100%. That's why you have sales guys that go from job to job to job to job because they understand I can close you, I can get you into a mental state that will make you make a decision. And then you have the buyer's remorse, and then I don't have the authenticity. What you did is what I teach. I teach
Mhm.
authenticity. Be
Yeah.
yourself, have a plan, listen to your customer, help your customer, and guess what? They're happy with you because you don't just sell them something, you take them on a customer journey, you walk them through the process, you get them to the place where like not only did you sell them, but you fulfilled on what you said you were going to do, and that's why you're successful. That's the difference between a salesperson and an entrepreneur. It really is. Now
Mhm.
there are a lot of great salespeople. I call it entrepreneur light because they take care of the customers and they do it through the whole process. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot of sales guys that will be like, "Oh yeah, I did this," and then they do the up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm like, if you were just consistent, you would make so much more money and be so much happier because if you tell the truth and you help people, like Ziegler said, you win way more than if you do the mental manipulation or the different things. And I know all the tactics. Like I've been in the sales game for years, and I was just like, I'm just going to be me. And if
Mhm.
they like me, great. And if they don't like me, fine. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Depends on who they are and what they're wanting to do. And I think that right there was the biggest key.
Yeah.
Authenticity wins.
Yeah. And when I first started out in the cleaning business, we used to do a dog and pony show. We would do all these things to convince somebody that they needed all this cleaning done. And to me, that was just so exhausting. And I would go into people's homes. I'm like, look, I can do whatever all the other cleaners are doing, and maybe you're going to be happy. But why don't I just do this one thing? And if you don't like it, I pack up, I leave, I go home.
Yep.
If you like it, then I'll continue. And they like that approach better than all the dog and pony shows. And I got so much business that way. I just didn't want to do all the fluffery.
Mhm. But that's key. That people need human connection, especially in today's day and age with the internet and fake labels and all the different, like you're getting hit by all this stuff. When you're authentic and you're you and you just treat them like a human being and you take care of them, you win. It's success is boring. It's doing the right process over and over again with a known result. The reason most people don't become successful is they want to do the latest, greatest trick instead of being consistent over time and building like you mentioned before, that legacy of I know Rob is going to take care of me. I'm going to refer Rob to my friends because Rob did a good job for me. and all that's simple because you just have to do A plus B. I'm going to give them a good clean carpet and I'm going to take care of them, or I'm going to consult them and take care of them. And we just want it to be the latest, greatest thing instead of building over time.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've grown this business to the point where a lot of my clients now are lawyers and doctors, and they've never asked for my background. Maybe they've heard my story, maybe they read my books, and so they know that in my past life I had this cleaning business. They don't care. They know that I'm going to, have their back. I'm going to do what's necessary to promote them, to market them, and they've never asked about degrees. They've never asked about where I went to school. That none of that matters. They just want results. So I look at people that are in car sales or in real estate or in all these other professions. Most of them don't have degrees, and some of them are the greatest, salespeople alive because they've not been ingrained with the schooling that these institutions are teaching, and they just learned how to be more authentic to people.
I don't have a degree. I went to school. Actually, here's the funny thing. You know what I did? I fell into sales. I wasn't even planning. No one really plans on going into sales unless you watch Wolf of Wall Street when you're young or something. You think, oh, this is great. I literally was working for a pharmaceutical company and they downsized. And I had a family. I was 28 or 29, I don't remember exact age. And I had two young kids. And the only job I could get was doing roofing, windows, and siding with Home Depot, which was 100% commission. I went from having a base salary or having to actually just everything paid for to having to kill to eat, as the say in sales. And I sucked at it. Like the first person I talked to, I looked at him and go, because I had this thought in my head that sales was bad. Like, because I grew up in the Midwest, that's just was the car salesman's bad or whatever. And I literally looked at the guy and go, I can't do this. And I'm doing the flip chart with Home Depot for gutters. And the guy goes, dude, I like Home Depot. I'm putting on my card. I don't care. You're good. I'm going to buy either way. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Sales is not about me. It's about them. I was so much in my head about how's he going to think? What's he going to do? Whatever. And I was like, wait a minute. And after that, I'm like, if I just help people, it's cool. I don't have to do these little tricks. And I think that's the thing, because it just ties back in what you said there.
Mhm.
People don't care about degrees. They don't care about the thing. If you're competent, if you know what you're doing, if you're solving their problem, and if you're putting them first. The
Mhm.
problem is that most time we want to look good, sound good, and put ourselves first instead of putting the customer first. And that's
Well,
where we
and I think that sometimes we overcomplicate the matter, and we want to sell them on something that doesn't solve anything. It
yep.
solves the problem of filling our pocket with money, but it doesn't solve their problem. And it may end up creating more problems down the road. And I've discovered that those entrepreneurs that are desperate for money, they're desperate to have an influx of sales so they can pay their bills, pay their employees, or get their machinery repaired, will lie. They'll do whatever they have to do, and I'm not saying it's unethical. Because, when I started out in the cleaning business, my slogan was, "We clean your carpet, not your wallet." And I wanted everybody to realize that they didn't have to pay a lot of money to use my service. The problem is that I only attracted people that didn't have money, that had the
Yep.
worst carpets in the world, that, I couldn't clean them. The best I could do is light a match and set them on fire and start over. And the people that had that mentality that they can go in as the cheapest priced person usually, are 3 steps away from bankruptcy because they just don't have the money to do anything. Well, when you go in there and be confident in your ability, build value, have a higher price, you grab the sales. Now you have money left over to take vacation, to basically to start having the life that you want to live,
Mhm.
because you're no longer chasing money. You're creating value.
Yeah, and you're setting in motion. And you mentioned that because you project what you want. So if you're
Mhm.
projecting you're the lowest, you're going to get the lowest clientele. If you project you're the highest, you might not get as much clientele, but you'll be there. But in sales, really the middle, it's the best place to be because you don't want to be the bottom because most people will be like, I don't know if they're good enough. You don't be a top because people don't want to pay too much. But if you come in with value and service, and I've talked on this a lot of times, if your value is 4 times your price, you win.
Hmm.
And you don't have to be the lowest competition. Like you don't want to. You want to make sure that they know you're bringing a good value. And I'm sure as your mindset shifted and you shifted and raised your prices, you started getting better clientele, more people, and then you're able to be like, oh, wait a minute, I can actually do what I want to do now, which is great.
Yeah, and that was the premise of me writing a book. It wasn't the fact that I knew all this material. It was just the fact that I experienced all this stuff and I wanted to put it down on paper to teach the next person. And so the very first book back in 2013 was all about social media. I was going through this, trying to learn Facebook, trying to learn LinkedIn, trying to learn all these things, and I'm like, this, no, I started writing shit down, but I didn't want it to make it a complicated book because for me, everything I do is I try to simplify everything. So I made this the easiest social media book you could ever read. And I tried to, get the publishers on it. They wanted complicated stuff. I'm like, no.
Mhm.
So I created my own publishing company, sold the book, and everybody loved it. And so I wrote another one and another one. And after 11 years now, we've produced 43 books.
Mhm.
And so, something born from desperation, the will to want to help somebody has grown into, something that everybody around the world can get access to. And to me, that's the fascinating part of having a business that goes beyond your local demographic, you know. And so now it's enhanced the way I do business. And I can work anywhere.
Yep. No, I love that. Like one of my best clients is from Germany. He's a Turkish man from Germany and he does AI. And I was meeting him at, I think it was like 5 in the morning for me, but at my house because I have pugs and we have kids and stuff. 5 in the morning is okay. Everyone's asleep. It's a perfect time, but it's so cool that you can talk to people around the world. I have some friends in Australia and just different people that I've met and I wouldn't have done without this. And I love what you said. You did the true entrepreneurial thing. The publisher said it needs to be X. You're like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. You went and reached into the future, created your own book, your own publishing, and now I think you said 42 books later, you're
43, yeah.
probably
Hmm.
doing, or 43, I'm sorry, you're probably doing more and reaching more people than that publisher because they were stuck in a box. It has to be technical and this and this. And in reality, impact and legacy is what matters.
Yeah.
How many people you can help with your voice. You can't, if you'd have wrote that other book, you might not have wrote another book because it might not have felt right. It might have flopped. So no, I commend you for that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, the last book I just came out with is the unscripted, unfiltered, unwoo-woo, and unguru, and basically it's a transcript book. What I had Steve Gamlin on this podcast, the E-Heroes podcast, 7 times in 5 years.
Hmm.
And so I thought, well, Steve, you've been the one that's been consistent coming onto the show when I needed you to be on and most people usually are on the show one or two times over 5-6 years. So I took his information and we compiled it into a book. And it's not like a typical book where it's you know it feels like a conversation. This is you sitting and reading this book. Yes, it says Rob, and then whatever Rob says, Steve, whatever
Hmm.
thing is you can actually just picture yourself on a porch listening to two guys talk about entrepreneurship. And a lot of people have picked up the book and they'll say, wow, it's so authentic. It's this, it's a master class. And they're giving us high praise. And then you always get this one person. But it's not a book, it's a transcript. And I just can't wrap my head around it. You're not my ideal client,
Right. Yep.
you know?
No, Steve's a good dude. He's been on my show too. He's a great guy. Yeah, but that's what podcasts are. I always think podcasts are two guys or girls, two people drinking a
Hmm.
cup of coffee, talking about life and business. That's kind of how my mind works because we've been storytellers for thousands of years, and you're being able to listen into how people succeeded, how they failed, all the different aspects of it. And I love that. I think that's great. And the critics, whatever, they're just going to be critics because they're not going to do anything.
And I think that's the hardest part for entrepreneurs to wrap themselves, their heads around is that you can't worry about what the critics say. You know, reviews, testimonials, Anywhere that somebody is going to poke their face in and say, I don't like you, you got to ignore them. Really, you get, and maybe they're jealous. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they just don't like you. Whatever it is, don't feed into it. You know, I have, I've been teaching a lot of these lawyers that, don't worry about what people say to you, about you on Google, because Google allows anybody to rate your service, whether they're a customer or not.
Mhm.
One of the things I like to do is look, reach out to your customers and get their feedback. Take their testimonials and put it on your website, put it on your social. Don't worry about it, what a third party does. And they're like, well, but Google is so powerful. Google's a joke. Do your own thing. Don't worry about what, but people are so obsessed with what Google does, like it's the end all be all thing. Don't worry about it. They can't.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Sorry. Branding's important. I think it's just that we get so caught up in how we think we're perceived. And in reality, your clients and people that you need to help will be drawn to you because of who you are. Because you don't need to help, who cares? They're gonna complain about you, they're gonna complain about someone else, and then you're gonna be doing whatever it is that you love to do. Like I'm running a half marathon in Hawaii in September because that's the goal I want to do. Last year I walked it, this year I want to run it just to like kind of level up. And I'll take the critics. Please be mad at me while I'm living a life I want to wake up to. I'm totally fine with that. You can be upset. You can write bad things. Write a lot of it and make sure you mention my name correctly. Because look, if you look at even politics or stuff, Trump, Biden, I don't care what side you're on, they both get the negative publicity, but it both helps them because their voice, their name, it keeps getting mentioned up. And then people are going to go and look and go, well, do I like Joe? Do I like Rob? Oh, I do like Joe. I do like Rob. What's this guy doing? Because people make their own opinion. And it's just, yeah, it's noise from people
Mhm.
that aren't going to do anything and will look back and be like, I wish I would have tried something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I people who know me who have listened to this podcast since the inception know that I go to Disney World every year. I take my kids, I take my grandkids. In fact, this year we're taking a whole group in May. There's going to be 15 of us, and it's an
Nice.
expensive trip. Um, but the reason I go to Disney is not that um, well, to be honest, it's for me to recharge. I go to places that not only are fun, that I can remember a time when I was a kid and I felt that magic going through me. But you know, I get so many cool ideas on marketing when I go there. And people are like, oh Rob, it's a kid's place, it's this, so what? You know, it just it's kind of like my happy place. It's where I go to relearn. And I think people forget that. They want to go to these exotic places, which are cool. I mean, I've been all over the world. I've been Germany, Italy, and we're going to France at the end of the year. But I think sometimes you need to just go to a place every year to refocus. You know.
Great. And here's the thing, well, two things. One, Hawaii is my place for that. My wife loves it. We go there. We know enough of the island now that it's not like I'm going to a new place and like trying to figure something out. Like I know where I want to go, what I want to do. But you mentioned Disney. I love the creativity of it because they have three rooms. They have a creativity room where they just dream as busy and crazy as they can be. They have like a practical room, which is kind of like the how to. Then they have a critic room, but the critic room is not critics like you think. And just because you mentioned it made me think about it. Critics in the sense of they're looking to see where the flaws would be so that they can protect the company from the flaws, not critique it in a bad way. And I just thought that's great because you need to go where you refresh. You need to go where it makes you get in your creative flow. That could be nature, that could be Disney. Um, I love Disney, but a lot of people, for me, I would go and I'm like, oh, this is great, but I have a little HDHD, I mean, bouncing around, so I have to have like a nature trail or something. And it's just finding what you love to do.
Yeah.
I think that there's no rules. Like there should never be a rule on what life you want to live.
Mhm.
Do what you want to do, whether you want to be a multi-billionaire, millionaire, maybe you want to make 500,000 a year and do whatever it is you want to do, or even 150. Doesn't matter if you're happy. That's the key. And I think that's the problem instead is that we get caught up in what other people think we should do instead of what we want to do.
Well, you mentioned 150, and you have a podcast called 150K Podcast. So let's talk about that for a little bit. And not to say, hey, one podcast is better than another, but I think that your podcast has elements that a lot of my entrepreneurs are going to want to listen to.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're doing the Disney tour because literally I was doing sales and I finally broke 100K. Then I broke 150, broke 200. But then I was like, oh wait, I took my kids to Disney, and I had an epiphany. I want to help dad, because that's in my head was my avatar, and 75% of my listeners I think are guys. I want to help dad break the 150K barrier, the 100K barrier, so they can start living a life they love. And so that's what it was. It was step one, because I always saw the gurus and the people being like, oh, you got to be a millionaire, you got to do this and that. And I'm looking and go, 18% of individual income earners make over 100,000 a year. This is
Mhm.
from a couple of years ago. That could have changed a little bit. And like I think 34% of couples. So not many people, if you're statistically look, even break 100K. So you need to get step one, 100K, before you go and say, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, billionaire. And if you want to be a billionaire, please do. But let's get you in place so you can start building that life and living at a level you want to do. And then now I think I'm 178 episodes in about 2.5 years. And I've
Nice.
had a lot of really cool people on, and it's been great. It's
Mhm.
just, I wanted to help people. It was like my give back.
Well, in 2000, in the year 2000, I think I was at my lowest point. I had the cleaning business. I also had a flooring store. The flooring store got flooded. Everything in the store was destroyed. Insurance was coming in. They were, assessing everything. And I said, screw it. I'm doing something wild. And back 24 years ago, Disney was a little cheaper.
Mhm.
So we packed all the kids up, and I had a few lesser kids. I didn't have grandkids at the time. Got in the car, drove from Pennsylvania all the way to Florida, went to, stayed at Fort Wilderness Campground, and we just had a fantastic time. And that was the catalyst that kind of pushed me to keep going back, because every time I thought about a trip, the next trip, my business started getting bigger and better, and I was making more money because I was implementing all the things I was learning into the business and teaching others. And so, people say, well, Rob, it sounds like, you're just doing your yearly you know, trip, but to me, it still means something.
Mhm.
And so when we go there, we try to do something different all the time, but I don't want it to just be that yearly thing. I do it for a purpose. I do it because, it helps me stay at that level I want to be at. We
Mhm.
talked about 150K, and to me, in the cleaning business, that 100,000 mark was always that ideal mark for all cleaners back then. That was their, oh, I'm kind of that level of, I just succeeded because I made this kind of money. To make $100,000 now, it's very easy, but you don't want to lose sight of those goals. And so,
You said something there that was funny, and I only want to say it because you said it's easy, but only 18% of people do it. It's easy if you're willing to put the work in and do the thing, and I think that's the separation factor that most people do, because they're like, well, it's not. How do you do this? Yeah, you showed up every day. You did the work that you needed to do. You are consistent. You're boringly consistent, probably in the processes and what you need to do to reach out to people. And that popped that thought in my head. And I'm sorry I cut you off there. I was
no,
just like, no, it is easy, but most people won't do it because it's not the sexy, flashy, exciting thing. It's like working out. It's like lifting weights. It's like being healthy. All the things that you want to do that make you successful normally are boring, and you have to be consistent for a long time to make it happen.
well, and if I go back, and I know I spoke about the cleaning business a lot, but if you go back to when I first started, I think my average sale was, around $100. And as I started getting better and started to be more authentic with my clients, within a very short period of time, I would say 2, 3 years, the average sale went up to over $600.
Mhm.
And so you're doing the same amount of work, but now getting paid 6 times better. And so if you can look at your own internal processes and what you do and how you do it and what you charge, you can charge 6 times more money and work less. And that right there is, you know, going to that level of waking up and having the tools and resources and money to do or to live the life that you really want.
Well, you made the key though. You mentioned you in the beginning, you were like, $100, and then you learned, okay, well, if I do this, and I get $200, and if I offer this, now I'm gonna get $300. But you were offering more value with the services you were doing and finding more things to help them out. Same thing with coaching. A lot of people try to be lowball coaching, $200, 250, whatever. And in reality, if you bring enough value, you can charge two, three, $4,000 for what you're doing, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, who you're helping, because you're shrinking time for them. But I love that you said that you learn the process, you test it out, you grow. And it goes back to the secret that I think you would agree with me on here. The more you grow as a person, the more your business grows. The more you shrink back as a person, the more your business shrink. It's the biggest entrepreneurship, my buddy George Ryan says. Entrepreneurship is the greatest self-help, mental challenging thing you do. And the more you level yourself up, the more your business grows. And if you don't level yourself up, then it starts to fail.
Yeah, yeah, it's I've watched so many of my friends that were entrepreneurs come and go. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I, it's not fun watching them fail, and I can give them all the advice in the world, but if they're not willing to get up every day to chase their dreams, to live the life that they should be, I can't help them anymore. It's sad because I know they could do better, but somewhere along the line, their dream died, and to me, that's the saddest thing. I think they say like for the Marines, once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. For an entrepreneur, once you're an entrepreneur, you're always an entrepreneur. You always have to think like an entrepreneur.
Yep. And yeah. Oh, that hit. Like I was just sitting there because I can't remember the guy who said it, but he said the graveyard is full of regret. Of
Mhm.
I wish I would have. And I think people like us were like, no, I'd rather push the limits, crash and burn, get up again, push the limits, crash and burn, than live a mediocre, boring life where I didn't at least put the effort and try.
Mhm. Yeah, and as I get older, I'm 50, I'll be 55 this year. Are there risks that I don't want to take? Of course. But I look at the big picture and say, okay, what are the ones that I think I can do right now that will elevate me to the next level? They don't have to be gigantic steps. They don't have to be huge investments, but one step at a time. I've been doing, like I said, 30 years is a long time to be an entrepreneur, but you learn to take those steps. You learn what risks are worth taking, and the whole build it and they will come crap doesn't work.
100%, 100%. Agreed. Well, and you said a few things there. You took calculated risk. You knew, okay, cool. I tried this, that didn't work. I'm going to do the thing I am. But you're right. You can't just build it and they will come. That doesn't work. What you had to do is you had to build it, then you had to market it, then you had to talk about it, then you had to be your biggest fan and let people know about it. Because if you don't say about it, who else will? If you can't talk about how great you are, what you're doing, and I know some people are like, well, that sounds cocky or that sounds this. No, my mission is to help as many people wake up to a life they love as possible. So that's not a intent about look at me. That's a I want to help you. Just like with you, with your books, with what you're doing, you're trying to help people step into what they're supposed to be, who they're supposed to are, be unscripted, be authentic. And I think it's just pushing the norms enough and knowing, okay, I'm going to take the risk. If I look funny, whatever. I've been told no to a billion times. I'm a sales guy. Like getting rejected is normal. Like
Hmm.
I get probably 10,000 rejections a month or more.
Right.
But I just keep going back because guess what? When I get the win, they're way better. I don't care if they say no. They're not saying no to me. They're saying no to my product, my service, or what I'm doing right now. And it's probably not even a no forever. It's just a no, they're not ready. I haven't gotten to know them well enough. I haven't helped them enough. They're not ready to make that move. And I think once you can change that, it changes the dynamic because it's not about me anymore. It's just about helping them and offering my service until they say yes. And if they say no, they weren't my person.
Well, also on the flip side of that, we have to learn to start saying no to undesirable clients.
Yep.
It's I had a client recently that went from being a victim of another media company. So I wanted to step in and help them. I wanted to be the hero. Well, after 2 months, this client went from being a victim to an entitled bitch.
Hmm.
And she drove my team crazy. And one day she insulted one of my team members, and I said, "That's it. You got to go. We don't
Yep.
have the time, the patience, or the bandwidth to deal with you. And I don't give a crap about your money." And so we have to learn to stand up for our principles. We can't be walked over. We run the business. If you run the business on your terms, whatever those terms are, you got to stick to them. And if it means getting rid of clients, you get rid of clients because it frees you up to get better clients.
Hmm. No, that's key. And that is a thing I think, especially first time entrepreneurs, people just starting out struggle with because they're trying to make the money do stuff. They're taking clients that they shouldn't have. Like, why am I not making this work? Well, you have to let clients go. I've done it and I was like, it's not easy. It's not fun to let that money go away, but your moral compass, your team, who you are, what you're trying to build. And then what I found is this, you let them go, and then all of a sudden the right people start coming in. Then you have the great clients, and then you have clients that are grateful for what you're doing because you're connected. You have that synergy, and it's so much better. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you have to let go of stuff and think, "Oh no, how's this going to work?" And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it just comes back in way better.
Yeah. Because we were all taught, you know, I think, and this goes back to the 50s and 60s, that the customer is always right. Now, the
Hmm.
customer is not always right, and you got to let them know that they're not right. And I think for some people that's the hardest thing to do because they want to try to find that solution that'll keep them there. And I stopped using contracts long ago because I've discovered that if a client is not the right fit, you want to get them gone as quickly as possible. If you try to force them to stay because there's a contract involved, they will make your life a living hell. And every time they pay that bill, you get reminded that they're putting this kind of pressure on you. So
Yep.
I stopped using contracts. And like I said, yeah, a lot of my clients are lawyers who love contracts. And I'm the
Yep.
guy that's doing all this service for them without a contract.
Yeah. But it works. It's your
It
authentic
works.
self. You're not stuck in there, and then they're like, "Well, wait a minute. If I can leave at any time," so now they trust you more because they're not like, "This guy has to show up for me because if he doesn't, I can just go." And in a way, it's actually better. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. So, how do people find you? Where do they go?
Sure. Easiest place, 150K podcast. I'm on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, all of those. It is funny. I tried to get Joe Graham on Instagram, but there's a guy that has 8 followers, so it's Joe Graham Real, REAL. On LinkedIn, it's Joseph Graham because that was my name. I have a Facebook group called 150K Podcast. TikTok's Joe Graham Real. But I was like, I tried. This guy, he has 8 followers. He's posted twice, but I can't get the name because he got on there first. Like he checked it out and forgot he had it. But yeah, that's the easiest place to follow me. And I answered the DM. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. That is definitely me.
Yeah, I post occasionally on TikTok. But I find my greatest audience is over on LinkedIn. And so I'll share the videos on TikTok, I'll put them on YouTube. And but for me, I think it's the younger generation goes over to TikTok and they'll stay there all day scrolling.
Mhm.
And it was funny because I posted something on TikTok, and within 5 minutes of me posting, the one person says, "Dude, you're out of touch. You need to, you know, accept the younger generation." I'm 55 years old. I don't need to accept shit.
No.
People my age are my demographic. And,
Yep.
the funny thing is, the younger generation don't have any money. So why should I
No.
go after them?
No.
So you have to understand who your target market is.
Hmm.
Go after them exclusively. And once you do that, you're going to find that a lot of your problems no longer exist because you're focused on those people that really want your service.
Yeah. It was so true because if I look at it, LinkedIn and Facebook are my two biggest platforms. And I'm 46. So that's probably the demographic there. I do have a YouTube channel and I have the TikTok, but that's for podcasting and video clips, which is a different game. But my coaching clients, Facebook and LinkedIn.
Hmm. Yeah. So what's one piece of advice you give the listeners before we part ways?
Sure, always chase your dream. It's your life. No one else gets a vote. Make sure that you're waking up to a life you want to live that makes you happy and that you're just content with. And there's no rules. So don't put a rule on it that you have to have a Lambo or a jet. You can, or that you have to be this or that. What do you want to do? What makes you happy? It could be you wake up on a beach somewhere. It could be you wake up in the mountains. It could be you have a farm. I wouldn't want a farm, but if that's what you want, knock yourself out. Just make sure that you're happy with it and you help as many people as possible.
Yeah, and it's I've been married 35 years, and sometimes you have to make compromises with the people that you love. And not saying that that doesn't make you unhappy. I'm just saying that your happiness needs to spread to others and include them. And so, if you say, well, Rob, I want to chase my dreams, but my wife doesn't want me to, or my spouse doesn't want me to, include them in.
Yeah.
Learn what their dreams are and start including both of you to do stuff that you both like. Because, when I started doing that, the business grew. We took more vacations. We enjoyed each other. I stopped going to conventions alone. It was just, it turned out to be funner.
Yeah, my wife is my biggest support, and I probably should have caveated that. But yeah, 100%. Like the reason we live where we live now is because she wanted to move here, and I want to empower her dream as well. And now, does it help where I am because of networking connection and all? Yeah, it's great, but it's finding something that. So yeah, that is a caveat. If you are married, make sure that you're not an asshole, and make sure that you talk to your spouse and set up what you want to do. Because like I want a cabin in Montana, she wants a condo in Hawaii. You can get both. Why not? And then
Mm-hmm.
you can go back and forth and you have the nice thing you want. Yeah, no, I agree 100%, my
Yeah,
friend.
I mean, our goal is you know, I hate the winters in Pennsylvania, so I like to move somewhere where it's a little warmer in the winter, and then come back to the Pennsylvania summers. And it's going to happen. It's just I got to get the kids on board too.
Yep. They always are there. Wherever the kids are, that's where mama will want to be.
Yeah. So this was great, Joe, and everybody, please go visit Joe at his 150K podcast. Listen in, subscribe, and in short time, you're going to have more episodes than me.
Hopefully. We'll keep going. Thank you for having me on, Rob. Appreciate you.
And for all you guys, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Adios.